RC Crew, I love to run, and I'm sure you do too if you're listening, but that means accepting the highs and the many challenges that come with it. Many of these challenges, like constantly worrying about niggles, could be completely foreign to your non-running friends. You might choose to run, but that doesn't make it easy. Today I'm airing all my running grievances with Haley by talking about the crazy problems that runners can relate to, but non-runners probably find completely insane. We'll try to even offer up some solutions where we can. Running is expensive, exhausting, and sometimes takes up my entire weekend plans, but you know I wouldn't trade it for anything. Still, it's fun to share common frustrations like trying to carry all of your things on the run or spending more time checking the weather than your emails. If this sounds like you, you're in good company, so let's get into it. For everyone listening in, I'm going to apologize right off the bat if you're hoping for a shorter episode, because today we're talking about runner problems, and there are just so many to talk about that I feel like we can make this into a 5 hour episode. But Haley, we're going to try to keep it to roughly an hour because I know that you have some movers coming and
Yeah,
we've got a
yeah.
deadline.
Moving house, so quite a lot going on. But it definitely could go on a long time, this one.
Yeah, and we did in advance discuss this, and it was hard to narrow down the list. But one that didn't make it that I'm going to now say is a bonus is just having so much workout equipment, because I think you were talking about how hard it is to move
Yeah,
everything
exactly.
over.
I've like accumulated a lot of workout equipment. Um, and yeah, moving the gym is kind of the hardest part about moving house. And it makes it sound like I have a big house having a gym, but I really don't. I just sacrifice a lot of other space to be able to have a gym, which when I'm injured, I'm just like so grateful for because it's so much easier to just go into your own gym than it is to actually have to like get in the car and go somewhere. So I'm always grateful when I get an injury, and I've been using it quite a lot this week, so I'm pretty happy about it. But moving it is a real pain because everything's so heavy. But hey, we'll get there.
I know it doesn't feel necessary until you really need it,
Exactly.
and then you're
I've
thankful for
really
it, right?
appreciated it recently. I've had a few things that have led to me doing some cross training, mostly not actually inflicted by running. But yeah, it's good to have the equipment there. And then just things like strength and conditioning. If you've got a few weights and that, you're a lot more likely to do it, I think.
Yeah. I think that's a very much a runner's mentality to say, but I'm injured, but at
Yeah,
least it's not a running
yeah,
injury, so
yeah.
it's okay. All right, I'm gonna get into our more official list. And I think the first one we want to talk about, and I have a feeling talking about all of these is going to be kind of cathartic. Like we get to just voice all of our grievances with the running world. But the first one is going to be GI problems, and this is one that's such a tricky one. And if you've been running for a while, you're familiar with. And I feel like you almost have to be okay with using a porta
Yeah,
potty if you're a runner.
definitely. And yeah, I think we've all had GI issues at some point, whether that's like upper GI stuff, like feeling sick and heartburn, and or like lower GI stuff, like needing to go to the loo on a run, and your stomach cramping up. You know, there's a whole range, and they're all really unpleasant. So I think most of us have experienced them. You're like super lucky if you haven't.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about this on more nutrition focused podcasts, but when you're running, there's a lot of jostling of the stomach and impact force, so it makes sense that you would have
Yeah,
GI
it does.
upset.
I've been doing some cycling this week as well because of not being able to run. And there's just not that GI kind of concern with cycling. You can just eat a lot on the bike and you just don't really get any issues. There's definitely that kind of jostling of everything in there is the main problem. And then there's also that like diversion of blood flow from the GI system to the working muscles and to the skin to kind of cool you down. So there's like a lot of factors that make running a bit. It can be a bit of a nightmare for the digestive system. And I think yeah, we could do like a whole episode on the GI system and running. Probably do about 3 episodes on the GI system and running. But there's probably a few quick tips that we can give people to help.
Yeah, definitely. I will say, um, one thing that I'm really thankful for right now is, I've been sidelined a bit from running for injury, which sucks, but I'm a huge hot sauce fan and I constantly have to dial back in marathon training. So this is the one time in the year when I feel like I'm trying to go crazy and get it in before, since I'm a morning runner, especially like in the evening times, I try to really really dial it back. So maybe that's one tip is stay away from anything super
Yeah,
fibrous or
that's so
super
true.
spicy.
When you're running, you have to be so much more careful about eating things. Whereas, like, if I'm going on the elliptical or something, I'm like, oh well, have my lunch, get straight on. Like you don't really have to think about it. That is one plus of being injured, if there are any. Yeah, like avoiding foods that are your triggers. I think we get better as runners at kind of dealing with this over time because we learn, when we can eat and what we can eat because we've all got like different tolerances and different triggers. My husband is like one of those people who's ridiculously lucky. When I first met him, he used to do this kind of challenge where he ran like down this kind of trail we had, like which was about like 15 miles to the other end where there was like a pub, had a cooked breakfast and ran all the way back like just after eating the cooked breakfast, and he could just do that just fine. So some people have like massive GI privilege, but that's not most of us. And I think we just need to learn like our triggers and our tolerances and stick to kind of some general rules about food and running, about like leaving some time before a bigger meal and also some time after a snack, but maybe a bit less time, and learning what foods do sit well with you when you run. And um, I think there's also like a very large degree of trainability with the GI system. I've definitely found that as I've been running longer, I can handle a lot more before I run and a lot more variety as well. Like my GI system is definitely so much better than it used to be. And yeah, I think one thing I see is that when people do have GI issues, they tend to like try and run before having any breakfast or when they've got nothing in the stomach. But I think that can actually just make things worse over time because they aren't training the gut. So actually just trying to tolerate a little more and a little more, you can actually train it, and that might be better than kind of avoiding everything before running, because then you never get that training effect, because I think it is very trainable.
100%, yeah. And we always say nothing new on race day. You don't want to do anything that's going to upset your stomach. But it is massively trainable. And, if you run first thing in the morning on an empty stomach and you want to see if you recover better with more, like,
Yeah.
start with a pretzel or two and you can work your way up. But I find that adding in new foods during training can be a great way to teach your stomach to handle
Definitely.
it better.
I see so many athletes who are like, oh, I must run before breakfast. And I can't eat anything at all before running, so I have to run in the morning before breakfast. And like running fasted all the time just isn't great for most people, and especially women athletes. It's just not, there's evidence it's just not great. So I say to them, just try and have a little bit of something, and then nearly like they're really kind of resistant often at the start, like, no, I couldn't do that, but then they find something they can manage, just like a really small thing, like half a banana or something, and then like over time they can just build up, and then it benefits them and they're running. So like don't think just because you think you can't eat anything at all, you can probably train that to some degree.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, we
Yeah,
have so
so
many more topics to get to. So, Haley, why don't you tell us about our second
yeah,
item on the
so
list?
like runners' skin problems. I think we've all experienced those. I think blisters is probably the main one. It is for me. I know we had chafing on our list as well, and I think sunburn. But um, I don't know about everyone listening, but for me, blisters is the main one. I don't. I mean, I guess because I live in the UK, maybe I don't get much sunburn. It's not like a massive issue here, I find. Like, unless you're running like in the middle of the day on about 3 days of the year, I don't find that I get massively sunburned. But obviously, that is an important one for a lot of people. But just things like wearing sunscreen, covering up if you go out when it's really hot, stuff like that can be really useful. But I think blisters is one that can be kind of hard to sort out and to overcome. I know I've had so many blister problems in the past, and it took me a long time to figure out what works for me. Um, and I think with blisters, it's all about just, well, for one thing, it's about having the right gear. So shoes that fit you really well. And for a lot of people, that includes like having a wide enough shoe, especially in the toe box. That used to be a big cause of blisters for me until I found like some shoes that were a bit more foot shaped, and that sort of stopped that problem. And then having a good sock as well. It's like a running technical sock. If you get blisters around the toes, you can get like toe socks as well. That actually, each toe has a sort of individual covering, and I found those are really good for the blisters that I used to get. But there are a lot of great technical socks out there as well. So shoes and socks, the right kind, are probably the best place to start there, and probably kind of help with some forms of chafing as well, because that can kind of affect the foot as well. I guess as well, blisters. knowing how to treat them, having the right products. There's a great website called blisterprevention.com that I get all my tips from, because they literally have sections for every kind of blister in every place, like under the big toe, under the foot. You just look at your kind of particular blister, and they have great tips and products for like that particular blister. And I found all the solutions there to be amazing, and over time I've just learned how to treat all my blisters, and I have like foolproof solutions for all of them. Like when I did my ultra in January, which is 50 miles, I couldn't believe I got 0 blisters and 0 foot problems, which was like amazing for me, because it's been such a massive issue for me in the past. And I think just the right shoes, the right socks, and learning techniques from that website, kind of sorted that for me. What kind of skin problems do you get, Corey?
Honestly, I don't have that much more to add because I feel like you covered it. But as we get closer to the summertime, sunburn is definitely on the list, especially when you're getting in long runs and spending a lot of time in the sun. So put on sunscreen, get a good sport quality one that's not going to come off in the sweat. But I also find like sunglasses and hat are so key to keeping out the sweat and also staying protected and trying not to get your face burned, because personally I burn very easily and my face will be bright red if I don't take all the right
Yeah,
precautions.
sunglasses are a great one. I never go running on a sunny day without sunglasses. I mean, for me, it's really important to kind of
Yeah.
protect my eyes. I wear contact lenses, so I always think maybe that makes my eyes a little more susceptible. I don't know. It's just kind of something that I think. But I think sunglasses are really great for runners because it stops you kind of squinting, which can strain your eyes a bit. And I found that I get migraines if I run in the sun without sunglasses. So invest in a good pair of sunglasses for sure.
100%. Okay. Moving on to another problem that only runners would possibly understand, but it's having all your plans revolve around running. And I think this is relatable to anyone who feels like you have to go to bed early on Saturday because you have your early long run on the Sunday, or, if you're injured or it's a rest day, finding what the heck do you do with your time? Even now, like I'm not putting in as much training while I'm a little sidelined from running, and I feel like I have all this extra time that I don't know what to
Yeah,
do with.
definitely. I'm kind of the same at the minute, although I do find cross training can take up a lot of time. Cross training and rehab is probably what I do with my time when I'm not running. But I have had injuries in the past where I've had to take a little bit of time off of cross training as well, and it is a bit like, whoa, what do I do with all this time? Um, yeah, I think that's really challenging because it can feel really mentally hard. But um, definitely, I also have that other feeling when you are running and you're like, maybe you've gone out for the night. I had this last weekend actually, and everyone else is kind of enjoying themselves at like 11 p.m. and you're sat there thinking, oh, I really hope I can kind of sneak away soon because I have a run tomorrow and I really want to get my sleep. So maybe when you're not running, you can kind of take advantage of those opportunities a little bit more and allow yourself to have a bit more fun and stay out a bit later. Although sleep is obviously important for injury recovery as well. So I feel like that one's a bit of a you never get to enjoy that one.
I know there's no
No,
real winning,
I
is
don't think
there?
so. Once you're a runner, your life revolves around running, and you can't really win. I think.
Yeah, there's kind of an ongoing joke that you don't choose running, it chooses you. And I feel like it's kind of true. It's a very type 2 kind of fun that suits itself
Yeah,
to a
that's so
certain
true. It's
personality.
like um, I kind of half feel bad about wanting to leave at 11 p.m. because I have a run to do tomorrow, and then I'm half kind of happy about it as well. I don't know what that says about me.
Yeah, I know what you mean. There's something about it to go for a solo run that feels kind of selfish, but at the same time, I know that I'm just more clear-minded, productive, and, you know, just overall in a better
Yeah,
mood if I
yeah.
get in my run.
You actually feel really thankful for it the next morning. I think because this event that I went to last week, um, I obviously didn't really as a runner and looking after myself and trying not to get injured and all that. I didn't drink and I did go home fairly early. And then the next morning, I got up and went for a run locally, and I saw later on in my run a couple of the people who had been at the party and they looked so terrible. And I was just like running happily past and I was like, oh, I'm so happy now. They looked like they were belly awake.
It's a good feeling. Yeah, I've gone out January 1st for runs before, and it does
Yeah,
make you feel
definitely. I
really good
love
about yourself, even
it.
if it's later
Yeah.
morning. I think Yeah, I think last year I went out at like 10:30 a.m. and it still feels like the
Yeah.
streets are completely bare and the people
Oh
coming
yeah,
out
I
are
love
not in good
having
shape.
like the whole streets to yourself and the trails to yourself when everyone else is still in bed.
Yeah, it's great. Okay. Next one on the list is the cost. And of course, when we talk about the cost of running, I think most people don't appreciate it's not just a pair of shoes. You have your shorts, you have your tops, you might have a separate running outfit, let alone your carbon plated shoes, and then race entries have gone up a lot. I don't know what they cost near you, Haley, but I used to be able to find 5Ks near me that were like 15, $20 locally. Now it's hard to find anything for like
Yeah.
under
Oh my God. The
$80.
cost of running these days is actually bankrupting me. I swear. It's terrible. Like, yeah, races. I mean, since I've been doing longer races, ultras are so expensive. I mean, I can literally only really justify like like one or two a year. That's just the cost. And then if you drop out, it's like my money. It's awful. There's so much money. And then shoes. Shoes just get more expensive all the time. You need a different kind of shoe for everything. Super shoes are ridiculous, and everyone kind of says you need those as well. And God, yeah, it's just impossible, isn't it? And then I think the worst thing is for me, definitely this year and last year, is just sports medical expenses, like the amount of physio. I've
Yeah.
paid for MRIs as well, like physio. Yeah, it's just crazy. It's not a cheap sport. This is probably the one that I could get most ranty on, to be honest, because running just costs so much money, I find.
Yeah, but I think you gave me a really good tip on this one, and you kind of talked about after one of our other podcast report recordings how you almost have in your mind a set amount of money that's set aside for physio and it's gone. And I find that actually helps me because, when you're injured and you need treatment or even just proactive treatment, it's so important. It's easier to wrap your head around it if you kind of accept that it's part of the sport if you're putting in
Yeah,
enough training.
yeah. Oh, God, yeah. I said that before, but I think my physio costs have been a bit more since then, and I'm not feeling quite so positive. And because they were like, actually, two of them have been non-running injuries. The two that have cost me the most have been non-running injuries, so I think that makes me feel a bit more negative towards it because I'm like, I didn't even do this running. I need to go to the physio because I think I've broken my toe.
So the takeaway is more running, right?
Yeah. Oh, so yeah, no,
Just run more and you won't get hurt if all
yeah,
you're doing
yeah.
is
I think
running.
just don't move house. Don't walk around barefoot, and then you won't injure
There you
yourself,
go.
and you'll be fine. I've had some toe stubbing incidents. That's the problem. Um, so yeah, I think they're still good tips. I think physio is kind of that long term investment. And even better, kind of doing those injury prevention things before you need to see the physio, just sensible increases, um, being good with all those recovery things, fueling. I think the more I see these days, I think fueling is one of the biggest factors in staying injury free, and they're not having all those costs of possible scans, physio, things like that. I think just fuel what you're doing, fuel after training, get enough protein. I think that's so important, and train sensibly, and strengthen things.
Even
That is
gels
so
are
true
expensive
as
though.
well.
Like I don't know about where you are,
So
but yeah,
expensive.
Morton costs like
Five,
$5, $6 a
six
gel if
dollars. Oh,
you're,
that's more than here.
taking those
So
multiple runs a week.
here, yeah,
Yeah.
that's one we didn't say before, but that's so true. Sports nutrition and just general good nutrition, getting all the stuff you need is a massive cost. And like the thing is, you kind of have to invest
Yeah.
in that a bit. Yeah, that can, if you don't, that can lead to like more physio costs. So yeah, that's so true. I don't know if I might have mentioned this on a previous podcast when we talked about costs, but um I've kind of started making my own sports drink, which is a lot cheaper, and you can use it like instead of gels. And I think there's a lot of stuff out there on the internet about making your own gels as well. I think one of the coaches who used to work for Runners Connect has a good recipe for like a fake kind of UCAN gel. So yeah, there's kind of ways to make stuff. It's probably not as good as the real thing, but it might taste a bit different, but you're saving money if you're making your own sports nutrition products, and then still kind of having those injury prevention effects of fueling those long runs and longer workouts. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. I think we need to keep moving along, but Haley, if you want to share that recipe with me after, I'll put it in the show notes because I think it would be interesting for people. Awesome. Okay. Next, let's talk about obsessing with the weather because I think everyone checks the weather, but it is such a unique thing when you're a runner. It's hard not to almost refresh every hour in that week leading up
Yeah.
to the race.
Yeah, I feel like maybe other countries have this worse in the UK because our weather kind of okay. I mean, it's not like we have hurricanes or like extreme heat or something, but still, that kind of refreshing the weather before a race is so relatable. I think it being windy is something that we get a lot here, and that has ruined a lot of race times for me. And there's just, there's very little you can do about it if it's going to be a windy day. Obviously, there's ways to prepare for heat. You can prepare a bit for the cold, but wind is just like my least favorite weather. So I'm kind of like, yeah, where's the wind? What way is it blowing? And I check that, not just races. I kind of check it for workouts as well because a lot of my good workout trails are like a bit exposed. So it's like, is this going to be another windy day when I need to kind of accept that one direction is going to be like 20 seconds per mile slower than the other way. I mean, you could just do it so you always have a tailwind, but then you just feel like a big cheater. So you got to be fair as well.
Yeah, 100%. And I think there's something to be said for on your workout days or hard days, getting used to the fact that sometimes the weather's just not going to be in your favor because you can't
Yeah, I guess
control it
it's
on
good
race day.
practice. If you work out in all safe weathers, you'll be more prepared on race day. And I think I do try and get outside, like in any kind of weather to prepare myself. But obviously, we don't get a lot of unsafe weathers here. So, I feel for people who have like hurricanes and more extremes than we have. I think, there are cases where indoor exercise is justified, but if it's safe to do so, maybe exposing yourself to a few different weather conditions can help get you ready mentally for race day for sure.
Oh, 100%. I think safety comes first. If there's major heat warnings or evacuation notices, don't put yourself at risk. But otherwise, if it's just a little bit uncomfortable, I think then maybe it's okay if your
Yeah.
times are slightly slower. Okay. All right, Haley, do
Yeah,
you want to read
so
out the next one?
I think we had always being hungry or thirsty, which is very relatable to me. I think you get it a lot if you're female for sure because people don't expect you to eat so much, especially if you're kind of a small female. People are like, whoa, how can you eat so much? How can you eat so much and still be slim? Like, but that's why that can be one of the reasons why we run. You definitely get to eat a lot more fun things. But I think I've learned over the years to just always have snacks and drinks with me. um, I was talking to an athlete about this the other day, actually, about having car snacks. So my car is like full of snacks and even like, some spare bottles of unopened water and things. I always find when I'm in the car, that's when I'm like, oh, I wish I had a snack. And then, if you are somewhere, your car might be with you and then you can go and get a snack anywhere. I think car snacks are the way to go. That's what I've decided.
I think at this point I've just come to accept that as a runner, I'm pretty much like a child in the sense that whether it's GI issues or like when it comes to fueling, it's pretty much that my body is boss. You got to be ready to eat at any time, go to the washroom at any time, and it's just
That is
it's
so
it's part of the
true.
sport.
You need to eat if you feel like you need to eat as a runner. If your body's asking for food, you need to give it to it. Like, I feel like if you don't, there's just, all sorts of potential for like just not being prepared for what you're going to do, just not having that brain power in like an important work meeting, or like just not
Yeah.
being able to work at all. Your brain just stops working when you don't have the fuel. I think you need to make sure you give your body what it needs, or your brain just kind of shuts down. That's what I find.
Yeah, and I think maybe unique to runners is even eating sometimes when you
That's
don't feel
true.
like it. Like I know personally, when I get in big long
Yeah.
run workouts, I'm typically not hungry for 2 to 3 hours after, but I know that if I don't get a good meal within the first 30 to 60 minutes, like I just feel
Yeah,
miserable
that's
the rest of
actually
the
something
day.
that is also very unique to running, isn't it? Just having to eat when you really don't feel like eating. I had like maybe a minor stomach bug a few
Yeah.
weeks ago. Not that it wasn't like making me throw up or anything. It was just making me feel like I didn't want to eat. I think that's what it was anyway. But like because I felt well enough to keep training, I had to keep forcing myself to eat. Whereas if you weren't a runner, you'd probably just be like, just have a bit less during this time. But that kind of forcing yourself to
Yeah.
eat, especially after a long run or a hard workout, you just never feel like it, but you need to like make yourself eat. That's actually one of the worst parts of running. Well, not the worst parts, but I really don't like that because it's like food should be enjoyed, right? Like I hate it when eating feels like a chore.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. You'd think it would be so much fun to just, you eat as much as you want when you want, but
Yeah,
it's almost the reverse that I feel like it forces you to be a little bit
yeah.
more
I think
controlled with your eating.
maybe for some people this doesn't happen as much because my sister, who's recently been coming back from she runs. She's coming back from some things, and I coach her. She was like, I can't wait to like do long runs again, so I can just like eat everything after the long run. And I'm thinking, do you really feel like that? Because I like, it takes me some time before I actually want anything. I have these hopes that I will feel like, I can have after my long run, I've burned all this energy, so I can have this and this. But then I was finished, and I'm like, especially now, it's like standard practice to fuel a bit more with gels on a long run. It kind of makes you even maybe have less of an appetite after. And if you've been doing a long run and you've been taking gels, and then you get back and you're like, now I have to eat something, it's not like the fun experience that you kind of hope it'll be.
Yeah. Just from personal experience, I know that if I get back from a longer run and I'm hungry right away, usually it means I'm
Yeah.
severely underfueled. Because when I fuel properly, usually it
Definitely.
takes quite a
Yeah,
while
that's a
for it
really
to
good
actually hit
point.
me.
Like, I think it's almost a good sign that you've been fueling your long run enough. If you come back and you're like, oh, I don't really want anything. Like, maybe not a good sign if you're actually feeling sick, but like if you just
Yeah.
come back and you're like, I haven't really got an appetite, like, maybe that's a good sign that you have. Especially if you haven't really got an appetite for sweet things. I know, like, when I was running, like, maybe 10 years ago, it wasn't such a thing to take gels all the time on runs. There wasn't like now there's so much good evidence for really fueling every run and not doing fasted runs. I know I'd do like a fasted run, which I don't recommend and I don't really do anymore. And I'd come back and I just want to eat all the sweet things. So, yeah, I think I remember that feeling, but I try not to let it happen anymore because it's not necessarily like a good sign.
And have you had the experience of waking up in the middle of the night and doing that internal debate of, am I hungry enough that it's worthwhile to make myself a full snack or meal, or am I better off just
Yeah,
trying to sleep?
definitely. I When you wake up in the night hungry, that is also a sign that you haven't fueled enough in the day, I would say. Unless you've done like a massive effort, like a race or something, where you kind of know that you haven't really met those calorie needs and you're just going to do it over the next few recovery days. Like, I feel like if that's happening a lot in training, you do need to fuel more, but it's easier said than done because I definitely have had that happen to me quite a lot. Not so much now, I'm better with fueling, but yeah, in the
Yeah,
past. And it's definitely a sign that you need to eat more. And I often find that I can't get back to sleep.
yeah,
If I don't get up and eat something, I just can't get back to sleep.
it's hard. Yeah, and I'm the same way. But I feel like sometimes if you're hungry enough, it's still more important to get that fuel in, even though it's hard to sleep. And you're right with it, meaning you're not eating enough. I find that I always get that kind of during the build-up phase because I find like once I get to peak mileage, I'm kind of used to how much to fuel and I
Yeah.
know what I need. But as I'm scaling up, sometimes I feel like
Yeah,
things get a little out
definitely.
of whack.
Yeah, like coming back from injury is a big one for that, I think, because maybe you try and be a bit better with your
Hmm.
nutrition when you're not running. Like you try to just make healthier choices and maybe don't have that second helping. And then once you start to build mileage, you kind of forget that actually you kind of need those things. You need those treats, you need the desserts. And it takes a while for that switch to flicker and you start to eat all the things that you were kind of maybe trying not to eat. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you're so right. I could go on and on in this one, but I'm going to talk about what another huge gripe of mine with running, which I think is probably very true for both of us right now. But it's that fear that like every little niggle, every little sore throat is going to sideline you. Unfortunately, I'm legitimately sidelined right now, but I think I probably have at least like 10 scares in a training block where it's, turns out to
This
be
is
nothing.
actually one of my worst things about running now that you mention it. I hate this. I think I'm particularly bad at it, maybe. Yeah, I mean, I'm also sidelined at the minute, but because I didn't really have time to, because basically I stubbed my toe very badly whilst moving house. I didn't have time to think, oh, is this a niggle? Because it literally happened and I kind of fell on the floor and knew that it was kind of bad. But usually this is like one of my kind of biggest things, is just worrying about every little niggle. And most of the time they don't turn into anything, right? But it's just that it just grates on you mentally, that worry that, is this the one that's going to take me out? Is this something serious? And especially, when you're coming up to a race and you think, if I lose a week to a cold or a flu now, there's no coming back from it. I think this is a really hard one, and I mean, I've been trying to improve my ability to deal with this for years, and I don't think you can't stop it. I don't think you can stop it. You can't stop the worrying. I think it's more about employing like some kind of mindfulness techniques where you just accept the worries out there and, just let them be there and live with them, because, keep them in perspective that there are worse things that can happen, but I don't think you can fight them. I think they're here to stay. Unless you have found anything that works.
No, I think it's an important call out that like if you're actually injured or really, really sick, especially below the chest, like do take some time off. I think what we're talking about here is just like
Mm.
even the little things, it can really stress you out when you think it's gonna sideline you. And my only mentality that's helped me even a little bit is the fact that I kind of know and take a lot of reassurance in the fact that if I do have to take a few days off, you're actually not losing that much fitness. And even if I end up like not skipping any run, I find just having that knowledge makes me feel a lot
Yeah,
better.
I think I would you agree that the fact that you know that you've got that elliptical option because you do a lot of cross training on the elliptical, and you know that if you just switch to elliptical for a week, you're still going to maintain that fitness. Does that help? Because I find that knowing I've got that cross training set up in my house that I could easily switch to something kind of helps me a bit with that fear. So like I feel like that could apply, anyone could kind of think about what cross training options they could have. I mean, not everyone's able to have a kind of home gym setup, but just, I guess, even just having like a cheap bike or knowing where a local gym that allows you to do like pay as you go kind of is just some kind of thing that you can do if you couldn't run. I find that mentally helpful somehow.
Yeah, I think it helps a lot. But the problem for me is even though from a fitness standpoint, I know I can get a lot out of cross training, I just don't enjoy it the way I do running, and I think that's relatable for a lot of runners. So there's still kind of a period of loss when I have to cross train, and there's still that fear that it's going to be taken away
Yeah.
from me when you
Yeah, I
start to
hear
feel those
that. I
niggles
think I
come
might
in.
have an answer though. I have you tried Zwift before? You know, the cycling thing? Yeah,
For
because I've
cycling, I
recently
have, yeah.
started trying that, and I think I kind of gives me some of that feeling of running. Like it kind of gives me a bit of that endorphins, a bit of that kind of enjoyment. Like
Yeah.
I feel like I've been trying it during this injury period that I've just had, and I'm kind of thinking I'm gonna kind of keep some of it in there because it does just give. It's the closest thing I've found to running enjoyment because I hear you. The elliptical, it sucks your soul. Like it's just the worst, isn't it? Um, yeah, but Swift biking indoors, I've been kind of enjoying it. Like it made me miss running less. if I yeah, I think that that could help me.
Yeah. I agree with you. Unfortunately, I don't have the space in my
Yeah,
condo for Zwift and a bike, but otherwise,
yeah,
I
it
think
is.
that's a great tip.
I mean, to tell you the truth, the thing that I stubbed my toe on was my turbo trainer. By the way, ironically, the thing that was supposed to stop me getting injured. That
At
yeah,
least you
well,
can
yeah,
cross
but the
train on
reason
it if
is
it injures you.
because I don't really have space for it. It's kind of like close to a walkway, so so yeah, that went well for me. But now I've injured myself by walking into it, so now I have to use it. Um, I don't know if I'd rather just never have had it in the first place, and I couldn't have injured my toe. But yeah, it's kind of a great cross training option, and I mean, yeah, it takes up space, but if you do have some space, it is probably a lesser taking up space thing. And like, yeah, but I say that having just stubbed my toe on it. So it's not the greatest endorsement, is
Oh,
it?
no, probably not. So maybe
Yeah.
just tuck it in a corner and in somewhere
Yeah.
safe and you'll be okay. But um
Mhm.
let's move on to talking about endless time getting running because I think I love to run, you love to run. I hate cross training. The other thing I hate is all the prep work. I don't like stretching. I don't like all the extra layers it takes, especially in the winter time. Going on an hour run, I think it's really a 2 hour investment once you talk about the prep work before
Yeah,
and
I mean,
after.
I think I used to be like that, but I have got it down a lot more recently. Like, I don't think it takes as much time. I definitely hear what you're saying. It takes a lot of time, but I think, yeah, just I've managed to cut it down a bit. I I have like I don't really stretch before because it doesn't really work for me to stretch before, but I do stretch after, and that does take some time for sure. But I'll try and do it while I'm like making the coffee or something, like multitask. But in terms of getting ready beforehand, there's definitely a lot of, I often find like just figuring out where to put all my stuff, like my phone and my keys, and yeah, just working out what shoes to wear is another one, I guess. And working out the route is another thing that kind of takes up time for me. But I guess then I have.
Yeah, the root and shoes are stuff I try
Oh,
to do
that's a
the day
good
before
idea.
now.
Yeah. I think if I ran early, I'd definitely do that. Like, I'm lucky with the flexibility that I don't run particularly early. I kind of work a bit before I run. So I'm already, when I'm working, and kind of half thinking, like, what shoes am I going to wear? What clothes am I going to wear? Like, checking the weather. But yeah, I think in terms of a warm up routine as well, I've kind of cut it down to a very focused, brief, kind of dynamic stretching of just like some problem areas beforehand. But I know I used to do a lot more. And I think if you are pressed for time, just working out, maybe with a physiotherapist, but they are expensive. Working out, what are your problem areas? What do you
Yeah.
really need to loosen up before you run? Just keep it to some like key exercises because like in terms of static stretching beforehand, the evidence for it isn't really that great anyway. So unless you feel like you get a big benefit from stretching beforehand, it's not really necessary. Like don't feel bad if you don't have time for it. Like it's not yeah, the evidence on that isn't great. So best to stretch after unless it helps because we're all so unique and if you do feel stretching beforehand it helps then go for it. But maybe try and keep it to some brief problem areas as well.
Yeah, everyone's different. For me, most of that time is foam
Yeah.
rolling. I find that just kind of like helps me, especially going
Yeah.
first thing in the morning. I think if I go later in the day, I
Yeah,
don't need it quite
honestly,
as
that's
much.
why, even though I could kind of go earlier and then start work after, I think one of the reasons I do some work and then go, which I appreciate that I'm kind of lucky to be able to do, is just so everything feels a bit warmer when I start and I'm a bit looser after a few hours after being up, and therefore I don't need to spend as much time on that warm up routine. So maybe one time saving tip is just like, if you have the flexibility to, for example, go either at the start of the day or the end of the day, like see when you feel best because then you'll probably need to do less kind of loosening up and stuff, I guess. If you go later in the day, your muscles
Hmm.
tend to be kind of worked and loose anyway, unless you've been sitting down all day, I guess. And then, then there's a whole new load of stuff you need to loosen up. But yeah, just if you don't have so much time for that stuff before, I find just really easing into the first few miles of your run, just like really shuffle it out to start with, can be really useful as a warm up to just get everything loosened up anyway.
Yeah, and if you're lucky enough that you can just work in your workout clothes, that too is
Yeah.
going to make it easier. Unfortunately, not really my circumstance, but it would
Yeah,
certainly be
I
nice.
mean, I am lucky enough to do that, thankfully, because else I'd take even longer. But I sort of feel like one thing I do is I start working in a certain set of clothes because I put on the ones I think I'm going to run in. By the time it gets to the run, I'm like, actually, I'm going to wear something different. Like I'm looking out the window now, the weather's different, or now I just don't fancy running in these clothes, and then I go and get changed. So maybe don't be like me. Maybe like be more decisive early on or something.
It all comes back to the
Yeah,
weather. It's not
the
just
weather
race
is
day.
really important.
Okay. I can't remember whether this gripe was me or you who put down, but the fact that like every cute fuzzy animal is actually a
Oh
danger
yeah,
when
I
you're
know we've
running.
had some chats about animals being dangerous before. I think it related to cows, which I don't know if it's that's quite a
Hmm.
UK specific thing, but like I've had some serious instances with cows around where I live, and cows are just terrifying to me. So yeah, um,
Okay, but do you think cows are
yeah,
cute?
we have some really cute cows around here. Have you not ever seen a Highland cow or a Highland calf? They're amazing.
I
Google
have
it.
not, and the first thing I think about when I think of
When
cute
when
animals is
you get
not
off this
Highland cows, but
podcast,
yeah, I'm
or
Googling
anyone
it right
listening,
now.
Google a Highland calf. Highland cows from Scotland, I presume, are just the cutest
The,
thing you've ever seen. Like they're so fluffy.
these are so much hairier than I
Yeah,
thought
they're
they were
so
going to be.
cute, but also kind of terrifying. And we have a lot around where I live, and the thing is, they sort of seem to disguise themselves as like rocks or something. So you're running along, and you're like, kind of like, oh, you just see a rock out the corner of your eye, and then suddenly it moves, and this thing with horns kind of looks at you, and it's terrifying. So that's my most terrifying animal around where I live. But they're cute, right?
Haley, I don't have the breakdown of what proportion of our listeners are in like rural versus cities, but I encounter a lot more, dogs, skunks, raccoons. I feel like those are maybe a little
I've
bit more
never even
common than
seen
the
a
Highland
skunk,
cattle.
so they do not exist in the UK as far as
Never?
I'm aware. And I've never seen a raccoon either. But I
Oh
imagine
wow.
coming face to face with a skunk is pretty terrifying. Like I'm pretty sure we don't have them here, but yeah, I've never even seen a real life skunk, but I imagine that is like scary because yeah.
It's terrifying because like oftentimes they're out in the morning time when it's still dark, especially like when you get kind of at that point of like winter or fall when it's like not too cold for them to be out, but you still have a lot of darkness, and it's hard because you don't see them until you're like
That's
very up
scary, yeah,
close.
because I imagine they camouflage. Like, do you have a lot of skunks? Like, how many skunks? Like, how regularly do you see skunks? Like, yeah, that's just.
So I think that the time of year I find them most is like November when it's dark for like my entire run. And I would say like on average for a 10-mile run, I might encounter like one to two skunks, which doesn't sound like a lot, but like every run and sometimes
So,
more is
so
quite a
this
bit.
is like really highlighting the country-specific differences here because I have had to turn back on countless runs this past year due to cows. However, I've never seen a skunk in my entire life in real life. You know, like
What about dogs? Because I was
yeah.
recently attacked by one, and I love
Dogs are
dogs, but
kind
it
of
was scary.
universal experience, I guess. I see a lot of dogs, and like you do see ones, and you can't. I mean, I love dogs as well, and I'm not afraid of them in any way. But like some of them, like I've had, you know, the worst dogs in around here, I think, where I live, are like farm dogs. So if a footpath goes like a farm or something, and there's a dog, maybe it's like tied up, but the chain's kind of long, and they're the ones that seem like really feral. They're like snarling and growling at you. They're the ones that really scare me. Like the ones that are out walking with owners. I don't really get too many bad experiences around here. But those like farm dogs are like terrifying to me. And I'm not scared of dogs at all, like in general. But yeah, I mean, I feel like what dogs around here where I live more of a problem than being attacked by a dog is like a trip hazard. Dogs are like a major trip hazard around here. Like I've had a really hurt my knee falling over a dog this year. They just kind of get in your way and
Oh
like kind
shoot.
of fall over the top of them. Like I think that one of the best things I found is just if there's like a dog owner ahead of you where the dog just kind of shouts so they know you're coming and maybe they can kind of get the dog under control and off the trail. Because otherwise they do kind of run in your way. And most of the ones I meet are really friendly, but like yeah, because I find that people keep the non-friendly ones on leads around here anyway, but just the falling over them is a real problem, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for the little ones, I find that too.
Yeah, you
You
don't
don't
want to
want to
like
steamroll
trample
them.
them or anything. Like, yeah, some people's dogs are so tiny. I'm like scared I'm gonna hurt them. Like, where is it? Where is it? Yeah, definitely.
It makes me think of like races when you have little kids too. Sometimes like I think often they're very keen to get
Mm.
near the front. You know, it's not like a full-grown adult who has a sense where their skills are relative to everyone, and I'm always really worried about, being that person who's gonna
Yeah,
steamroll them
I
to the
find that
ground.
like I don't really go to tracks for working out much anymore, but I used to work out at a track and sometimes there'd be like children about and they would just walk across the track and I'd just be so scared that I just like run smack into one of them and like knock them flying and I think it kind of happened once
Hmm.
and I felt so bad. Like they're okay because to be honest, we weren't that dissimilar in size, but like still, I was going quite quickly and they kind of rocketed across the track and it was horrible. I was like, oh God, did their parents see me?
All right, I'm gonna be looking out for Highland cattle now the next time I'm in the UK, but
So
I
cute.
definitely have not encountered them on
I
a
mean,
run.
like I guess they are quite local to
They
this
do look cute.
area, maybe because where I used to live, we was more like regular cows. But I still think they I mean, there's a lot of calves about like baby cows, and they're so cute. But also, the kind of teenage cows are the really bad ones. Like, big tip: if you come to the UK, do not enter a field of teenage boy cows, even if like there's a footpath go through it, because they think of you as like a game. They kind of herd together and charge. Like, I had to jump an electric fence before because they're just yeah, don't just avoid the field, I'd say.
This full electric fence story I remember is on
Yeah.
another podcast, so any longtime listeners who have heard that
Yeah.
episode, dig it up and listen again because it's a great story. All right, let's talk about something a little bit more universal, which is not so specific to Canada, the US, but endless laundry. And this is so hard, especially in the wintertime with all those layers getting dirty. It
Oh my
takes
God, the
forever.
laundry. I think it's true with cross training as well because everything just gets so sweaty.
Yeah.
Like, if you're wearing a pair of running shorts, maybe if you don't have time, you're like, oh, I'll wear them 2 days outside or 3 days even. But maybe that's just me. But if you haven't got any, right, you're just like, oh, I'll wear them another day. But if you sweat on a cross training machine indoors, there is no wearing that kit again, is there? Like, it's just so disgustingly sweaty. It's got to be washed straight away. And straight away, as it just like smells out the house, right? Like, cross training adds to the washing and winter running because then it just gets muddy and disgusting. So yeah, I that is also a really terrible thing about running because you are always doing laundry.
Yeah, the one thing with cross training is I don't always wear split shorts, and I typically do when I run outside, and I find I'm more inclined to reuse shorts. I don't know if it's kind of like not the only thing I'm wearing.
Yeah, yeah, I guess so. I mean, I feel like anything I wear on an indoor exercise machine is just maybe that's a thing because I'm doing it in my house, right? And you're doing it in the gym because gyms tend to be like air conditioned. There is no aircon in my house. It is hot. It like I yeah, is
The
it
gym
not?
is
Oh.
not well air conditioned.
Maybe it's as bad as my house then. Like, there's kind of like a big window, like into where all my gym stuff is, so the sun just heats it up. It's like free heat training, Like, oh, so
Mm,
sweaty.
yeah. Okay, that definitely sounds brutal. All right, I'm gonna move on to Burnout, and maybe I'll let you describe what you think is worse, because I feel like there's so many different types of burnout you
There
can experience
are,
as
and
a
like we
runner.
could do again like 5 episodes on burnout. I think to be honest, there's just so much overlap between the different types of burnout as well. Like, you might be feeling like you're mentally burnt out, but often there are elements of kind of, having run too much, having not eaten enough, having not fueled enough, having not slept enough. All those physical things also go into the mental burnout, and then if you feel like the burnout is kind of more from a physical perspective, often there is kind of mental elements going in there because we can't really separate the mental and physical stress all kind of produce stress hormones in the body. So really it's all going into the same bucket. So I think it is hard to separate different types of burnout because often a lot of overlap. Um, I think we've all experienced it, right? Like that time when you just maybe you just really don't want to go for a run, or maybe you want to go for a run, but your legs just feel really sluggish. You're just not feeling like yourself. For me, when I feel like what I think of as burnout, for me, I often feel quite like inflamed. My legs feel quite sort of sore and inflamed. I guess what a tip I often give if people are feeling burnout is just like tell them to just really get on top of the fueling and maybe just like fuel more than they think they should, because it's surprising, I find, how and there was some kind of study about on this actually which is really interesting, where they looked at a lot of cases of what they thought were overtraining and found that like a large proportion of them were probably under fueling. So if you do feel burnt out, um just really fueling everything, fueling more, especially carbohydrates. Like maybe take carbohydrates on like a lot more shorter length of runs than you normally would take a gel, you know, and that actually can help. Even what you think of as mental burnout can actually be kind of an under fueling thing. So I always look at that area first. But yeah, there's, you know, there is other contributing factors. Like if you're running your easy runs way too hard, I think that's another thing that can lead to burnout quite quickly. And then obviously the mental things, like if you just don't feel like you're improving over time, I think that can lead to burnout quite easily as well. If you feel like there are a lot of mental elements to the burnout, even though there's probably not just mental components, there's often physical contributing factors. Switching it up, training for a different event can be quite useful, I find. Yeah, so much we could say on this. We should do an episode on burnout. I think that would be a good episode because I have lots to say on burnout. But yeah, what are your experiences?
Yeah, I'll take stock of that because I actually do think it would be a really good episode. So maybe even just for that, I won't spend too much time. But personally, I think I've dealt more with the sort of um, psychological burnout than on the physical side, just because I do find my coach is usually pretty good at kind of giving me advice of how much is too much physically. But when you're deep in a marathon cycle, it gets really tough, and maybe even some harder times when I've had to cross train a lot because I know that I can get fitness from cross training, and you can maybe even do a little bit more because it's less impactful on the body. But I don't enjoy it the same way I do running, and I find it takes that much more mental energy for me to get through the
Yeah,
workout.
oh, the cross training burnout is real, right? Like that's how I started doing Zwift cycling this week because I did, you know, a lot of kind of hours on the elliptical just at the start of the week, like maybe even just a few days, and I was already thinking, God, this same motion, you know, this non-enjoyable thing that isn't really giving me those same levels of endorphins as running. And yeah, cross training is tough and it's hard to kind of get through it when you are, you know, you've got a period of prolonged cross training. And I do think that's where something like Zwift can be really helpful if it is something that could be an option for you. um
Hmm.
I think it's, you know, if you have a road bike, it is on the like cheaper side of what, you know, of kind of possible cross training options if you were thinking of kind of investing in one. I don't know that getting a subscription to it, if you've already got the stuff, would be more than a gym membership. So I just feel like there's a bit of like gamification and doing it with other people that gives you that kind of running specific endorphins a bit. But definitely I was getting a bit of mental burnout from that elliptical earlier in the week for sure.
Yeah, I think that's so relatable. All right, I'm gonna put this back pocket because I
Yeah,
actually do think this would be a really great topic. So we'll
cool.
save that in the bank for later. Um, I feel like we've almost touched on this next one,
Yeah.
the treadmill. The elliptical kind of sucked, but even though it's running, the treadmill just really isn't the same as actually getting in a run, and that's something I think a lot of runners don't understand. And I hear some runners saying, I just hate running. And I'm like,
Yeah.
have you ever run outside? And they're like, no, well, I go on my treadmill. And I'm like, it's not the
Yeah,
same thing.
definitely the treadmill. Running, okay, I'm gonna say this might be something that's quite unique to me, although I have heard it from other athletes. Running flat on the treadmill, like just running level, is terrible. However, I have been known to enjoy like an uphill treadmill. I find that a lot more easier to deal with. And if there's any particular reason that I need to go on the treadmill, like maybe it's snowy for a few days or something, I find that taking advantage of doing some like uphill training on the treadmill can kind of soften the mental blow a bit for me. You know, just even just like say I've set this for athletes recently, like because I think you can get like so many like bonus benefits from it, and also it's really a lot lower impact, so it can, you've got that benefit of reducing the risk of impact injuries as well. um if you have to go on a treadmill because it's like a snow day or something, just doing something like 3 by 10 minutes at like 5% or something as like a tempo workout but on a hill at a slower pace, I just find that so much mentally easier um, than doing the similar thing on the flat. And in fact, if I have to run on a treadmill for an easy day, I'll just kind of set it to like somewhere between, I'll vary the incline throughout, but just keep not caring about pace, just use heart rate. And I just find that so much more, so much easier to do mentally, just putting that incline in there. And I think that does kind of help with those possible overuse injuries that might come a bit more if you're on the treadmill, just because you're using more of a similar motion, and it does make it more fun, I think. And then the other thing is it stops you thinking so much about pace, which I think is one of the things that makes the treadmill terrible for me, is that the same paces just feel so much harder on my treadmill, and every treadmill is different, and I think they're often not calibrated quite right. So I think just forgetting about pace on the treadmill and using maybe your heart rate or how you feel, maybe varying the incline so you don't think about the pace, just, yeah, that really helps me with treadmill running. And then just finding some good entertainment, I think, like something to watch or something to listen to. Plus, I find it helpful to like cover up the time. Otherwise, the time seems to go so slowly. Just like put something over it, I think. So you're not constantly staring at it. But then, you know, you've got the downside of you take the towel off to check and you're like, whoa, that's only been 5 minutes. That felt like an hour. So it's not like a super effective method. But I think that just the incline thing just helps me with treadmill running.
Yeah, the treadmill sucks. I have nothing to add to that other than run to the top, a great way to pass
Yeah,
the time on the
yeah,
treadmill.
exactly.
Let's plug
Find a good
the
podcast,
episode
yeah.
here. Okay. I want to see if I'm unique in this next one because I think we kind of agreed on this idea of you're constantly going through new gear as a runner, and it's tied to the price thing. But one thing I find is I get really, really excited about new shoes, but I kind of dread anything else. Like I get attached to my shorts or my favorite pair of socks.
Yeah,
Are you the
definitely.
same way?
My running kit is like so old because I just have favorites, and I can't find the same thing again, so I just wear it over and over and over. Like my running kit is just ancient. Like I yeah. I've had to, you know, there's like sports wash, like special cleaning stuff. I've had to like buy that just to make sure it like stays clean because it's just so old and the sweat's probably like a bit ingrained that I'm like, yeah, we need some heavy duty kind of wash on this. But yeah, I get so attached to stuff. And like, yeah, it's the cost thing as well, right? I'm like, I don't want to pay for these new stuff that isn't even as good as the stuff I have. So I just reuse. And then like I even sew stuff up, like if I get holes in, so I can just keep reusing it. Yeah, but shoes are very exciting. I get very excited about new shoes and occasionally new socks as well. But not necessarily new gear.
Yeah. I'm not so resourceful to tie or sew things up. The one thing I will say is definitely check with the brands on some of their policies. I had one pair of Saucony shorts, for instance, that after not so much time I had some issues with. And when I wrote to their support people, they immediately said, "Hey, you're eligible for replacement. Do you want a new one?" So, you know, a lot of the brands are actually pretty good if the gear doesn't last as
Yeah,
long
that's
as
a
you might
great
expect
tip.
them to.
Like it kind of works for a lot of stuff. I think if something doesn't last as long as you expect it to, don't just like accept it. Or if something isn't the quality you expect, like I've even had gels before that have come and they've had like a little hole in, and I'm like, this just isn't on. But like, you know, you could just throw those ones away and keep going. But like, I emailed the brand and they sent me like a whole new box. Like, I think manufacturers are generally really, really kind about that kind of stuff, and they will replace. And actually, some sock brands have a policy, don't they, where if you get like a hole in a certain amount of time, they'll replace the sock for you. I think that can be useful because my socks often get holes in them.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I hate it when my favorite pair of socks get holes in them because I always have like, this is my favorite sock for warm weather and my favorite sock for race day, and it sucks
Yeah,
when you have to go
definitely.
find a new one. Okay. All right, I'm gonna let you read out the next one.
Yeah, so I think our next one was about like strangers on the run, and like seeing someone on the trail that makes you feel a bit wary, and being worried about that kind of being alone and meeting someone who maybe doesn't, you know, most people you meet are really friendly, but then you worry when you see perhaps like a lone person that you didn't expect to be there, and you're a bit worried about what they're up to. Like yeah, like stranger danger basically. I think this is, I mean, like, this is very kind of prevalent in women. I think it's just the fact that we do feel a bit more vulnerable when we're out running. I mean, I'm sure there's some guys out there that get it as well, but definitely I know from speaking to people that it's something women do tend to think of a lot more. And often a lot of like incidents of people being harassed or having things happen to them like in the press, it is mostly women. um so I think it is sensible to take like reasonable precautions. um I know I definitely, if I'm running on my own somewhere kind of isolated and I see like a lone person just kind of hovering on the trail, I definitely have that thought like, oh, shall I turn around? Like, I feel like it's sad that I have to think that, but I definitely have turned around before because I see someone, or maybe I always have my phone, which is a great tip. I think always bring your phone. Like, I see some kind of like people on like social media and stuff saying, oh, go out for a run without your phone because it's good for your mind to not have your phone. I'm like, don't do that. Always, always bring your phone if you can, like for safety. Like, you don't have to look at it. Like, don't go running without your phone. But I've had instances where I've rung up my husband before as I'm running past someone I'm a bit worried about, just so I feel a bit like someone knows where I am, and like maybe they're less likely to kind of do anything, which they probably wouldn't. But I do feel like you get a bit of a feeling about some people who just seem to be like hovering on the trail with like no dog, or um, they some people just look a bit suspicious. And I think it's definitely sensible to take precautions, like tell someone where you're going for a run, like just like text someone, I'm going out this time, I'll text you when I'm back or something, like especially if it's nighttime, because I don't think it's reasonable for me to say like, oh, don't run in the dark or don't run in places that aren't feeling safe, because I think, we have to do what we have to do. Some people only run at dark, some people only have options for running that aren't the most well lit or whatever. So I think it's about taking precautions, like tell someone where you're going, tell someone how long you're going to be, and say you'll text them when you get back. Things like rape alarms as well, like if it makes you feel safer, like you could carry something like that. And if you do have the option to run with someone, then do so, if that's your thing. I mean, some people just really like running alone, and that's okay too. Just take some of the other precautions. Yeah. Anything to add, Corey?
Yeah, I don't think I have that much more to add. And honestly, some of what you said makes me reflect on just how privileged I am, because I often do head out for my runs without a phone, oftentimes in the dark. I'm lucky enough that
Yeah.
I feel safe enough to do that, even if I did maybe have one encounter where some guy who was clearly not mentally well did assault me when I was out on a run, but I think that was a real one-off instance, and I think a lot of what you say is um, really good due diligence to say stay. It's like let people know where you are, have something on you, and it's unfortunate that
Yeah.
these are things that you have to worry about as a runners, but it's kind of the reality, especially when a lot of us are getting in runs early morning or late evening when the sun is
Yeah,
not up.
I mean, I know, having talked to my husband, he doesn't think about it either. He'd definitely go running without a phone. Like, I think it's just one of those things that just is a lot more on your mind if you're female, and it is one of the things that if you said this kind of thing to a male runner, maybe they haven't thought about it so much, unless they've had incidents in the past that make them think about it more. But I know I've talked to a lot of female runners who feel similarly, like you do get that kind of little rush of fear when you run past someone who looks a bit suspicious, or I've had incidents where I'm like, is that car following me, like are they following me, like, and you're just not sure. And yeah, I think that's where having a phone, or just carrying a phone with you, can be really helpful. And I never really run without my phone, like unless I'm running with someone else.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. If you do have any resources to add on that piece as well, we can definitely add them in the show notes. Okay. All right. Moving on to one which is a little bit more lighthearted, but definitely still a struggle for runners, is just trying to carry everything. And maybe this relates to on the piece of like trying to bring your phone, because that's probably one of the reasons I don't bring it, is it's just once you have your gels and your keys and other things, it's
Yeah.
a lot to bring
Yeah,
with
I
you.
had this problem for many years, but I feel like my problem's kind of solved because I found this perfect belt that like carries everything so well. But even then, it's not perfect. There's still like some days I'm like, I don't want to wear my belt, but I basically do every run with this one particular belt that I found, and I recommend it to all my athletes, and it's just like saved me in terms of carrying stuff because it stays up well. I've never found a belt that stays up well apart from this one. I think especially again, like being female, we tend to find the belts don't sit so well and they can move about. I know from speaking to other female athletes that they have had problems with this, but this belt seems to sit well. And you can, and I wore it for my little test run this morning that I tested out my little injury with. And I had my phone, my keys, and a gel all in there perfectly. And yeah, I find I take it on every run. So that has massively helped. So find a belt that sits well for you. The brand I really like is a Naked Belt, it's called, but they're a little higher price point. But I think if you can, they are worth it because they last a really long time and you can fit everything in. Because I just find that a lot of running kit does not have adequate pockets, but this belt has really helped with that. Otherwise, I used to be the same. Like, where do I put this? Where do I put this? I tried other carrying options, like a foam band or something, but nothing has ever really worked for me like this belt.
Yeah, no, that's a really good tip. I think my favorite is actually called a spy belt. And I think they are produced in the US. I believe in Texas. The only thing is they're great for gels and stuff, but they're not quite wide
Ah,
enough for my phone, I find. But otherwise, definitely highly recommend for anyone who wants a kind of smaller, lighter belt, especially that's my go-to
mhm.
usually in races for carrying
Ooh,
gels.
I've not heard of that one. I don't know if they do it here, but it sounds good.
Yeah, maybe not. Okay. I think this one is a great one to wrap up on because I do know we're coming up on time and you're gonna have your
Yeah.
movers coming over soon. Um, but the fact that when you describe your running to family members and friends, they oftentimes think you are completely insane and question your life choices. And no matter how much I think I'm doing a very good job at explaining why I run, I feel like it is completely nonsensical to anyone who's not in the
Yeah.
sport.
Oh, that's so true. I mean, I I'm lucky that my kind of immediate family run as well, so they get me. But like, uh, my husband's family, my parents in law and my siblings in law or whatever, they think I'm so crazy. When I go to stay there and they're like, oh, she's going. I know they're thinking, oh, she's going out for a run. They're nice about it, but I think they don't really get it. They don't get why I'd rather go out for a run and kind of stay and relax for a bit. But um, yeah, I guess we all do things that other people don't really get why we find them fun. So I think it used to bother me more, but now I'm just like, it's my choices. I'm happy with my choices. This is what I like to do. If other people like, as long as I'm not, like causing any problems for anyone, it shouldn't really be a thing. But yeah, it's yeah.
I think,
No, no, you
sorry,
go
go ahead.
ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think that's part of why an episode like this is so cathartic, because it's great to know that there is this community of runners who completely relate to all of this little stuff that, again, it makes no sense to somebody who's
Yeah,
not
that's so
involved in the
true.
sport.
Like it's so great to moan about like runner specific things with other runners. I'm kind of lucky that I can do that with like my mom, my sister, but um, yeah, like some friends, they just would not understand why I'm like, oh, I've got these running shoes or whatever, or why I'm so excited about them. And what's a super shoe is a common thing that I have discussions with people about, and they don't really understand super shoes for some reason, but. It's just so great when you meet another runner and you're like if you find out, you get a job and you realize like your boss is a runner or you realize your neighbor is a runner, like it's so awesome. You're like, oh, another runner, someone I can talk to. Where I'm moving to my new house, I realize one of our neighbors is a runner and I'm like, yes, he'll understand when I'm like doing strides up and down outside the house because my neighbors around here must think I'm totally crazy. I think neighbors like it's good to have runner neighbors because I'm sure my neighbors just think there is something wrong with me when they see me because I've got like a hill outside the house. So sometimes I've finished my run, I'm doing some strides up and down the hill, and I'm sure they're looking out their windows like, what is she doing out there?
Yeah, I think the super shoe thing could be its own episode too, because it used to be if it had a carbon plate, it was a super shoe, and now those have kind of found their way into all sorts of
Yeah.
shoes, and I don't know if that's the case, but um, in any case, I think what you're saying is totally true, that it's awesome when you have those people where it's like, you get it, you get why I love these, cushy, extra soft shoes and why I need to spend all this extra time getting sleep to run
Yeah.
early morning the next day.
Yeah,
It's
going
it's a
out with
lot of
runner
fun.
friends is a lot of fun because you're like, oh, can we just like go for coffee rather than go out drinking, or can we just go home at a reasonable time? Like maybe let's go for dinner at like 6 and then just not go out afterwards or something. So yeah, like runner friends are good ones to have.
100%. Haley, before we wrap up, any final shout outs, grievances for the running world that you want to shout
I
out?
think we have covered them all. I don't think I can think of anything. Yeah, I guess just like being the only thing that's come up recently is just being afraid of injuring yourself doing non-running things because it has happened. But now, like, because it's happened a few times, if I lift a box or something, I'm like, oh my god, like, what if I, put something out or do something and then I can't run? Like, I've injured myself not running more times than I've injured myself running now, I'm sure. And it just makes me so cautious. I'm like, I don't want to lift this heavy thing, or I don't want to play around with my niece and nephew or something because I'm sure I'll hurt myself. So yeah, I think that's the only thing that comes to mind. How about you?
I'm trying to rack my brain if there's anything that we didn't touch on
Oh.
today, because I do think it was pretty comprehensive. I think I'm trying to think, is there anything that we didn't get to? I think it's probably the early wake ups. And I know there's other times to run, but I find for me it just doesn't work. That's the one time it does work. So I do consider myself a morning person, but it's kind of just de facto because that's the only time that works. So it's the getting up in
Yeah,
total pitch
yeah, that's
blackness.
true. I mean, I don't do that so much anymore, but like, I definitely remember those times.
Yeah, definitely. All right, if anyone listening has other grievances we didn't bring up, definitely feel free to put them in the comments if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or another platform. We'd love to hear it and maybe even do a podcast about it. But Haley, this was awesome.
Yeah,
I
this
had
was
so much
fun.
fun today. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Bye.
Thanks, Haley.